So, it's the Sunday after Christmas, and we're nearing the end of Luke's nativity story. So far, the events have gone something like this. A young girl named Mary finds out she's going to have a baby, but she's not married yet, and that could be a bit of a problem. Joseph finds out, but luckily he behaves himself. Next, our young couple have to take a long walk to fill out some paperwork for the government, but while doing that, the baby decides it's time to be born. And instead of help from the machine that goes ping, it's supported from the cow that goes moo. Now, 40 days later, it's time for another walk to Jerusalem. Actually, it turns out that hike isn't as long as I thought. According to Google Maps, it's only about 8.2 kilometers, or an hour and 47 minutes. And then after today, Luke will give us one more story about Jesus as a child. He's going to drive his parents frantic during another walk to Jerusalem. He's going to go missing, but don't worry, they find him in the temple. Luke's family does a lot of walking. They're like the first century equivalent of a hockey or a soccer family. Matthew's gospel, on the other hand, talks about King Herod's anger management issues, wise men from the east, and seeking refuge in Egypt. But he leaves out the barn. Anyway, Matthew was last year. This year, it's Luke. And I guess I'm relating a bit more to Luke these days because it feels like there's been a lot of traveling in my life lately, but without the fear of some angry maniac like Herod. Instead, we're just hiding from millions of tiny things called viruses. At any rate, this year was different, very different for most of us. And I think that Christmas in particular has highlighted that. Most of us are probably accustomed to getting together with family and friends for parties or family gatherings. And all of us have had to do church very differently this year. One thing that was very different for me this year was Christmas morning. There was no Christmas tree, but there was a lot of unpacking. There was no colorful Christmas paper. Instead, there were a lot of cardboard boxes. There was something new, but most of the stuff were possessions that I've had for many years. All of this is because I moved from London to St. Catharines on the 21st of December, and all that unpacking was part of settling into a new apartment. And on Christmas Day, I was unpacking my books in particular. And this activity ended up filling me with gratitude. I felt grateful not only for the books, but all the journeys that they had been part of, and the people who had shared those journeys with me, and some of the lessons I had learned along the way. And all the work of unpacking the books was also a reminder of something else for me, starting a new life here in St. Catharines. It was a beautiful reminder that there are many things in my life that I've experienced long ago that I'm grateful for. And I'd like to think that gratitude is not only for those shiny new things, it's not only for the young, it's also for the old and experiences from the past. And in today's story of Jesus, although he is young and new, all or most of the things that we will celebrate him haven't happened yet. The gift in today's story comes from Simeon and Anna. As I was unpacking some of my books, I was reminded of Simeon and Anna. I thought that Mary and Joseph receiving their words was like a young person receiving a book from an old friend. The old friend has a life full of experiences from the world. They have seen how the world moves and have a sense of the direction that it is going. They have some idea of what this child is going to encounter in life. They know some of the books that speak of where the world might go. And handing the book to a young person is not giving it an instruction manual to direct the exact actions of life. It's an offer of a voice that might provide some insight. And this brings me to the topic of prophecy. Biblical prophecy is not necessarily predicting the exact events of the future. Biblical prophecy is closer to having a critical understanding of what is going on and speaking the truth. Walter Brueggemann is one of the theologians who I love his writing on prophecy. And he wrote that prophets shake us from our numbness. Numbness can rob us of our capability for humanity. And the prophetic tradition knows that it could be different. And the prophetic tradition speaks to how this difference can be enacted. Prophecy and prophetic rhetoric appear in the Gospel of Luke. And the author of Luke frequently uses it to show that Jesus fulfills the law and the prophets. In today's reading from Luke, he uses prophecy to show that Jesus and his family were devout to the faith of Israel. The very act of Jesus' parents presenting him in the temple illustrate that Jesus' parents cared about their faith. Then we have the Song of Simeon. It does not come out of the blue, as it were. It is an echo, or multiple echoes, from an older tradition of the Israelite people. The words of Simeon are used in evening prayer service in the Book of Common Prayer. They're known as the Nunc Dimittis, or the Song of Simeon. Master, now you are dismissing your servant in peace, according to your word, for my eyes have seen your salvation, which you have prepared in the presence of all people, a light for revelation to the Gentiles and for the glory to your people Israel. This song is a collection of echoes. Now you are dismissing your servant in peace. These lines allude to the story of Joseph in the book of Genesis. The line is spoken by Joseph's father, Jacob, while he is embracing Joseph after reuniting with him after multiple years of separation. The salvation which you have prepared in the presence of all peoples, a light for revelation to the Gentiles and for the glory of your people, Israel. This alludes to stuff from the book of Isaiah. It was Isaiah that Rob was reading earlier this morning. I will make you a light of nations, that my salvation will reach the ends of the earth. And the Lord will bear his holy arm in the sight of all the nations, and the very ends of the earth shall see the victory of our God. These lines praise God's reign in Israel and celebrate the end of the Babylonian captivity. It's thought that they were written as the captivity was coming to an end, when some of the Israelites had already returned to Jerusalem. These literary echoes tell us something about Simeon as well. The connection that Simeon makes to Isaiah suggests that he feels a great sense of hope for social justice. The captivity under the Babylonians was an extremely traumatic experience for ancient Israelite culture and society. It meant being separated from home. It meant being ruled by another nation. It meant being subject to economic exploitation. And for some, it meant being enslaved. And unfortunately, when Simeon echoes Isaiah, it is because he and others have experienced similar trauma under the Roman Empire. When Simeon holds Jesus and proclaims, "My eyes have seen your salvation, which you have prepared in the presence of all peoples," he's saying that he sees in this infant a hope that will overcome the traumatic experiences under Roman occupation. And I'd like to think that I've got a bit of an idea of what Simeon is seeing. Jesus' parents are not wealthy. We know this because the passage mentions that they offered 2 turtle doves or pigeons. And according to Mosaic law, this was the offering that was used if the family could not afford a lamb. Jesus' parents were not wealthy, but they still did what they could to fulfill their devotions. I would like to think that Simeon sees a family that is doing its best. Its best to fulfill its devotions at a time that is very difficult. Simeon is looking at this loving devotion and believes that it will continue in their son. He sees the love that the parents have to teach this child. And I wonder if Simeon is looking at this love and thinking, if this baby loves others this way and can teach others to do the same, then maybe there is some hope. Maybe this love will survive the brutal occupation. It's not going to be without difficulty, but the love in this infant can transcend the difficulties of the world. And then there's the connection to the story of Jacob reuniting with his son Joseph. To me, this suggests that Simeon is feeling a sense of paternal joy, the joy of a father connecting with a child, even though he himself is not Jesus' father. And when I read this story, I was reminded of a very early memory in my life, the first time I can remember holding another baby. A colleague of my mother's, a fellow music teacher and his wife, had had their first daughter, and I was about 4 years old. I can remember going over to their house a few days after she was born. I remember sitting on the couch and having this baby placed in my arms. I remember feeling happy that I was holding a baby. And I don't remember much else. I don't remember thinking about why it was amazing. I don't remember having much of an understanding of it. I just remember feeling a tremendous sense of love for that tiny life in my arms. And as time has passed, this memory has become more precious. Our families kept in contact over the years, and I studied art at the same place that she went to high school. And I served on student council with her. Now she's a very talented young woman who has worked on several very impressive humanitarian projects. In some ways, knowing who she has become makes that memory more precious. Knowing that this life that I've seen developed over the years is what I was once held in my arms. In other ways, it doesn't. Holding her when she was an infant was a moment full of joy and love in and of itself, without the knowledge of who she would become. I believe that's the love and the joy that Simeon felt when holding the infant Jesus. When he says that now you can dismiss your servant in peace, he's not saying that he's dying in peace because he believes that Jesus will bring about a social political revolution. On seeing and holding the infant Jesus, Simeon has just fallen in love, the agape love. It is the love of God for not only one's own, but for all other faces. This love enables us to live in the communion of shalom, the communion of peace. I treasure my first memory of holding a baby and the memories of who she became because it feeds my hope that every relationship I have, every person I meet can grow and develop in love as this friend did. I hope that all of us will have a moment like this, where we've encountered a Simeon and Anna who see something in us, or that we've had that moment like Simeon and Anna where we feel that very simple beauty of another person. Neither Simeon or Anna could have known exactly what Jesus was going to do in his life. That's not exactly how prophecy works. Anna and Simeon didn't know that Jesus was going to turn water into wine, raise Lazarus from the dead, calm storms, or be crucified by Pilate and rise 3 days later. What they saw from their place in Jerusalem was a society that was troubled, a people that were struggling with basic living. But next to all this tiny baby, a tiny baby whose parents loved it, a tiny baby that would grow up and face these troubles. And when I think about this contrast, I feel amazed. Amidst all the troubles that Anna and Simea witness, they see God's salvation in the love of a tiny infant. It can't talk. It can't do much of anything at this point. Probably it makes a mess every hour or so, and at this point, its greatest accomplishment is sleeping soundly. And if I put sleeping soundly on my resume, I doubt I would get many job offers. But when Anna and Simeon look at it, they see salvation. They see the hope that comes from new life. And I think that hope in new life is beautiful and wonderful. I think that the past year reminds us of that. The current pandemic has been a threat to all of us, and we all have had to take precautions to protect ourselves. And these precautions have been very isolating. But not only has life as basic existence continued, life as relationship has continued. All of us have worked to keep connected with one another. And the effort to keep connected is where I see hope. Just like a baby, wanting to connect with another human being doesn't look like something large scale. It's not a thing or a grand accomplishment. And like a baby, relationships can be messy, and sometimes they are better when they're quiet. But just as Anna and Simeon saw hope in the infant Jesus, I feel hope after seeing how people want to stay connected against the backdrop of this global pandemic. And my prayer is that God will bless you all with a hope for your relationships and in the hope for preserving them amidst our very isolating times. Amen.